Welcome to Power of the Tribe podcast. I'm your host, John Connors. I'm also the founder and head instructor of Connors Martial Arts. We teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing, and mixed martial arts. And today, I have a lot of value for you today. Today, I have 5 tips to take you from white belt to professional jiu-jitsu player. And I'm here with my host, Dan Robin. How you doing, Dan?
Sounds good. And those tips also, they apply to any belt level, right? Like it's not.
They apply to
it's
anything.
Not just for white belts.
It isn't. I just threw that in there because it makes for a great headline. People like the white belt tips, and they like over 40. So let's say this is for over 40 white belts. It's going to take you from a beginner to a pro.
Right. But the truth is, it does work for over 40, and it does work for white belts.
It does.
But it also works for
I think
everybody
so.
else, including you. Like, you know,
I totally agree.
been
Dan, what I
jiu-jitsu for
did
20
is
years.
I sat down with some people, including my son, Rory Connors, the great Rory Connors, and I brainstormed, like, what are the key things that would help somebody develop the fastest in jiu-jitsu?
So this episode is the key episode for developing jiu-jitsu.
If you did this, and I'm going to break it to listeners now, it's actually more than 5. So if listening to more than 5 tips,
might be some bonus tips.
Some bonus tips. But if you did this, and you know what? It's really not a lot of extra work. It's
more
just
mindset change.
It's more mindset. It's more being smart. If you did this, you will accelerate your development.
That's a guarantee.
Guarantee. Yep, money back guarantee.
You will give money back to
No
all
questions.
the podcast listeners.
Yes, I'll give them all the money back, double your money back.
A free podcast
If you did
for
this.
a year.
Free podcast for life, double your money back.
Right.
If you do this, if you implement these things, Dan, and you do not see dramatic, eye-popping development in your
Podcast
jiu-jitsu
free
game.
for life.
Free for life. Yep.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. And I'm not even kidding about that.
I know.
No, it's weird,
I know.
Dan.
I know. They can't miss, right?
I wrote down all these things, and then I realized I'm not actually doing all of them. I got to tighten my own game up.
Right.
And I'll tell you, I was talking to the great Nguyen. He's a brown belt with us for you listeners out there. Excellent jiu-jitsu player. He's meticulous in tracking his training. So I know some people do this. I don't do it, but it's probably not a bad idea. And he puts it all in a spreadsheet, so he knows how many hours he puts in every year. And he said in the last, we've been in COVID and everything, so that interrupted a lot of training. But just in general, he's not had time to train, but he's developed faster, he thinks. And I think it's part of what we're going to tell you here.
And even that, it's reminiscent of when we were losing weight and just using a calendar, like tracking it.
Yeah.
I think tracking is another thing that can, like, you can't lie to yourself if you're
Right.
tracking. You can't be like, I'm going in as much as ever, or I'm being pretty consistent. If it's right there in front of you, Tim looks at his spreadsheet, he can't lie to himself.
Yeah.
If he's working out steadily, he'll see it. If he's slacking off, it's right there in front of you. Although that's not one of the tips.
That's not one of the tips. Well,
It is
not
a
really.
tip.
Okay, shall we get into it?
Let's do it.
So this is in no particular order as well. Here's the first one, Dan. I suggest all students video their own sparring sessions. So you go to class, you do your drilling or whatever, and then maybe the last 30 minutes of class you do some sort of drilling. If you video that, it's going to really help you troubleshoot your
Sparring,
game.
some sort of sparring.
Yeah, so if you and I are rolling at the end of class, you just bring your phone in. So the easiest way to do it, and I have a lot of my students doing it now, you have your phone, you buy an easel on Amazon for $19, so it's super cheap. I suspect everyone has a smartphone as it is today, right? So it's really no investment, $19. You put it on there, and you just turn it on when you're sparring. And what you can do is you can then review it and go through, like, fast forward, like put it on double speed or whatever you want. And you could say, oh, I was on top, I was passing. Whoop, now I'm on the bottom. What the hell happened? And you could see the moment where it all went very bad for you.
I have 2 thoughts. One is you were always noticeably better at knowing what happened in a roll. Like the way you described is how I'd feel every roll. Like it would be like, how'd you get past? And I'd be like, I don't know. Like I was trying to stop him.
He was on side control.
Yeah, he was kind of just went past me.
It was like a Star Trek
Yeah, it's like,
just
how did you get
materialized.
armbarred? Like, I don't know. He had my arm. I did something. He had my arm. So I could see that being a huge help in that way. I also could see being kind of horrified the first time I did it, like, or, thinking,
Oh yeah.
thinking, oh, my passing's really tight. And then you look at the film and go, oh, it's not nearly.
You're like, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
Looks like two chimpanzees and geese flopping around, right? Yeah.
Right. But again, that could help. You could say, wait, my hips are not in. I could have sworn I kept my.
What I found
hips
when
tight
when I watch video of myself is I'm shorter, balder, grayer, and older looking than I ever imagined, and I move much more awkwardly than I thought,
and does
and
that
more slowly.
distract you from
Totally, yeah.
analyzing your jiu-jitsu?
Totally, yeah. It's a complete
You have
distraction.
to rewatch again.
But here's what happened: if you do that long enough, Dan, you get over it.
Yeah.
I imagine when you first listen to this podcast, when you first hear your voice, it doesn't sound correct. It sounds weird, right?
We had the same. Yeah, I'm still not thrilled about it, but you just get used to it. What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? Yeah.
I still put on. We're 95 episodes in. I still sometimes tune in and go, "Oh man,
What was I talking
look at me
about?
there." Or there's certain episodes where I'm like, "What am I doing there?" Just look at like there was one just recently where I was like kind of rocking, like I was on meth or something. I was like, that's what I do. I rock like that, like a mentally ill person. But
You got a little Rain Man thing going every once in a while.
Yeah. Or there's like with my hands, I'm like, what is that about? I'll be like talking like and I'm like, what is
You do
going
have a
on?
sinister thing. You do a thing I notice. You do a twirl of the hoodie thread. Do you notice you do that?
No, well, no,
You
but
don't
I'm
do
not
that?
surprised.
Yeah, you do that a lot.
Nothing will surprise me.
Yeah. I'm like, huh. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like energy, and I'm like doing this stuff, and I don't notice it. But
Yeah.
so now I'm
so
gonna
anyway,
sit
so when
rigidly still. But back to the point.
So yeah, you'll get over how disturbing you look. Yeah, I had a student years ago, really nice guy, and he did a private lesson with me, and he goes, "Is it okay if I video it?" I said, "That's a great idea. Of course you should." And he videoed it, and we went over some things, and we did a little sparring, and I saw him a day or two later, and I go, "Hey, did you learn anything when you went back and looked at the video?" And he goes, "Yeah, I learned I'm a big fat ass." Apparently, he didn't know that his ass was very fat and large. Yeah.
Well, he learned something right there. Right there, that could
Dan,
be valuable.
he was
to
still
learn.
pissed 2 days later.
Yeah.
He's still disturbed by that.
All right. Well, maybe you need to learn that. Maybe.
But you will get over that part of it,
Yeah.
and
The
you'll
point
start
is,
to
and
learn
related
jiu-jitsu
to
things.
That's actually with the podcast too. I'm like, I'm still not always thrilled with what I see and hear watching, but who cares?
Who cares? Exactly. You get to be a little stoic
Yeah.
after that. But a lot of times, if you look at that point of transition where you go from neutral or winning to losing, so to speak,
Right.
if you clean up that point, man, you're going to make progress, right?
It's a good point too to give a little instruction of how to use the video, because I think some people video and then they just watch it and they're
Right.
like, I still don't see what's happening. I still don't.
You could theoretically look at your sparring session and examine every moment in it and determine you could have been doing something better, right? But the best place to start is right at that tipping point where it really goes bad, because that's going to be probably the most important thing to clean up. And if you clean that up, things are going to get better. And then sometimes our students come to Rory or me and they go, "Hey, look at this video. What am I doing wrong here?" And then we can help them. And that's the best coaching you can get, because it's right in context. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very effective.
Do you agree? I mean, I think it's probably just a gray area, but something always could be improved. Like if you get swept, do you ever look at a sweep and say, well, he just swept you. Like it was too good, or, he's too good or too fast.
Yeah, you're right. You can always do something
There's always
different.
something, right?
It could even be, Dan, like, I'm not going to put myself there to be available for that sweep even, So,
Right.
yeah, definitely.
So it could be like your opponent was very, very good to nail that, but there's always something.
Right. I shouldn't have approached him in that manner or something. You know what I mean? I should have had a different strategy, so that wouldn't be as available to him. Yeah, there's always something to learn. But if you just did that, so you go to training, so what are you doing? How much time would you be adding to it? If you did 30 minutes of sparring and then you spent 15 minutes to whip through it and identify 1 or 2 points that you want to troubleshoot and think about, I don't know, maybe you're spending another 40 minutes or something, but you're making material gains. So I
Right.
think it's a great use of your time.
Yeah, and you didn't even necessarily, you don't have to do it every time, right? If you're doing it
That's
never now, you
Mm,
can only get more. You can only help
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
right? Even if you, because I can imagine someone listening thinking, well, I'm not going to video every day, you don't have to do it. If you're doing it never, do it once a week, or
I totally. The way I look at development in jiu-jitsu, Dan, is it's almost like there's all these gold nuggets out there, and how do you want to look for them? Like, if you're not looking for them at all, you're not going to really find them. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's, so if you're just showing up to class and you're not looking for these gold nuggets, which are parts of your development, you're just screwed. You know, you're not going to. It's like, what if I told you, Dan, there's on this beach, there's all these gold nuggets buried in the sand and hidden under rocks and everything. And do you want to bring a metal detector or not? I mean, if you want to find them, maybe just bring a metal detector. And it's not going to be perfect, but
right. I just go to the beach to have fun. So
there you go. Frolic, yeah.
we were actually talking a little about that, which it's semi-valid, right? Just because you hear this a lot, like, look, I'm going to jiu-jitsu just to have fun, hang out with friends.
Yeah.
But you can do that and develop, right? You know, because
Here's what I think,
if
Dan.
you're just if you dismiss these points because you're like, I don't care, I just want to have fun, it doesn't really work. Like, I've gone that route, by the way. I've gone that route of, like, I was getting frustrated and saying, look, I'll just have fun, I don't care if I get better. But I couldn't, the frustration kept getting worse.
It
You know what
gets
I mean?
worse.
It didn't,
Yeah,
I wasn't able to just say, I'm just going to have fun, I don't care if I get better.
I agree. I don't think humans are wired that way. It doesn't work that way. Development is something that we're looking for, and it's natural. So why buck it? And it's not that much harder to develop, actually.
Right.
You know. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think that's a myth. I think that's a fantasy that doesn't work. I'm just going to go have fun. I'm not going to try. You know, that's an ego trap, an expression of ego trap, where you're like, I'm not even trying. So who cares about the results?
Right.
And that's somebody kind of bullshitting themselves, I think. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't work.
Or trying to deal with frustration in another way, you know.
I think it's
And again, there's a kernel of truth to it. It's good. You could just be like, I don't want to be a world champ. I just want to have fun in a way, you know, like but that
Right.
doesn't mean you don't want to
if
develop.
yeah, exactly. And if you develop, you'll have fun. I mean, you're going to feel fulfilled. Yeah, you're just putting yourself in a better position. Yeah, development is the key. Okay. So the second tip, you know, and you know, I said go pro because I was thinking of this guy I mentioned him before, Stephen Pressfield. He's an amazing author. He wrote several good books. One of them is Gates of Fire. It's about the Spartans fighting at the Pass of Thermopylae. He wrote The War of Art, a really inspiring book if you want to create anything or be a writer. And then he wrote another book. I think the title was something like Going Pro. And he's making this distinction between being an amateur and being a professional. And when you're a professional, you just do things in a certain way to enhance your development. So this is it. So if you do these things, you're just going to develop faster, and you're kind of taking it a little bit more seriously. You know, you're not quitting your job. You're not shaving your head, and you know, you're not going to get up every morning and run 12 miles. It's just like simple things that are going to enhance your development. You're just taking it a little bit more serious. So
I ironically did all those things without getting better at jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Without
So number
focusing on
2
this.
is taking notes before and after training. So, and this can be very simple. So you can spend just 4 minutes, 2 minutes before and 2 minutes afterwards. The 2 minutes before, you could just be cataloging, here's what I want to work on today. I want to work on my escape from mount, whatever the hell it is. And then afterwards, 2 minutes, well, I realized I wasn't getting on my side enough. I'm going to get on my side more. If you just do that, it's going to accelerate your
Right.
your development.
And a good point, again, is the way you put it, that I know you could say to people, and maybe even if you'd said to me years ago, you know, take notes before and after, people might automatically say, I'm not taking notes, like,
Right.
you know, but you just mean it could be a minute.
It could be a
you know.
minute, Dan. I think so. Like, I'm learning a new takedown because we're going to go compete next weekend down in Atlanta, Georgia for the no-gi
Oh,
pants.
that's next weekend.
And
And that's
so
your ultra heavyweight.
I'm going with the big boys.
Yeah.
This may be the last time you hear from me, Dan. Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
Maybe a stain on the mat. down in Atlanta.
We can hobble into the next podcast.
So I had to develop a new takedown, and so part of what I was notating is the number of reps I practiced it every day. And I found that when I started writing down how many reps I did did more reps.
Right.
I mean, it just happens. It just follows, So I'm sure that helped me develop that takedown better. Okay.
And again, even, sorry, real quick,
Yeah.
1 minute of like your example saying, I need to get on my side more.
Yeah.
It prevents classes of which I think we've all had, and I had many of them, where you didn't learn anything. You just sort of like, not even against the instruction or anything, but you just didn't retain it.
Yeah.
You just let it, you learned it while they were teaching it. Then you rolled and you weren't using it, whatever was taught that day. And then you left and then you didn't go back to
gone.
it for a week and it's gone.
Yeah.
And so writing it down a little bit, I mean, everyone knows this. Everyone studied in school. Everyone knows that if you just spend another minute looking something over, reminding yourself, you can retain it a lot better than if you didn't.
And, so I mentioned Tin earlier how he said he's developed more with less training. So part of it is this attitude, like coming to training with the deliberate mindset to develop yourself. And if you have notes and you're writing notes, you've already set the table for that.
Right.
You're here to develop something. I think the other reason why he's developing faster is he's training with my son a fair amount. So now you're training with another person who's trying to develop himself all the time. So you build this culture of like we're all trying to develop ourselves in our game. And then you compare notes. You're like, oh, I figured this thing out over here. And it's like this mutual sort of group of people learning about a subject. And I think the culture is important. Yeah, if you're the only guy coming to class with your notebook, you're starting to look like kind of nerdy or something, teacher's pet. But if it's the culture, we're all videoing our sparring, we're all taking notes. That's what I want to see at my academy. Like everyone adopt these principles, and I think they're just going to skyrocket their development. So the third one, Dan, third way to go pro with your jiu-jitsu is world-class instructionals. So this will take a little bit of time, but not necessarily a lot of time. Like you listen to this podcast, right? Well,
this is world class.
This is world class.
So you're already on your way. Whoever's hearing
I
this.
was in the car over here. I was listening to Gordon Ryan has a new product out. It's about mindset for jiu-jitsu. So you don't have to watch it. You can just listen to it. And so I'm driving in the car and listening to that. I mean, how much better is it to listen to that than, some local news ranting and raving about COVID or the election or politics, all stuff that we don't have much control over, and it's really not going to improve our life one way or the other. So you just put a little time into some and if you have something you're interested in, you're like, well, my triangle choke isn't what I want it to be. Why not find the best people in the world, see what they're doing, And when I say world class, that's what I mean. I mean like the people who are world champions, and even some of them, they vary in their ability to instruct, but like you want the best information.
Right, but there's so many out there. You can pick and choose. Unlike like when you started, you'd be like, there's two sets of instructionals out there or something like that.
There was literally none when I started.
Now, if a certain person doesn't speak to you, you can find someone else, another world-class instructor.
Or you get that BJJ Fanatics. They have a whole host of instructionals, and most of them are great. So I would say invest a little time. You don't have to go crazy overboard. But if you did that, added an hour to your week listening to that instead of, mindlessly surfing the internet it's not like everybody is using all their time perfectly anyways, right?
Wasting lots of time.
Okay. Number 4 is positional training. So this is super critical. You can learn things in positional training that you can't find on instructionals, that your instructor really can't tell you either, because they're really not even techniques. They're like these small changes of position. So when I was working with Kevin Malloy yesterday, and he started on side control, then he's moving to north-south, and he wasn't quite dropping his hip enough, so I was able to defend myself a little bit. So then, and at first, I didn't know what to tell him. I was like, I don't know what to tell you. And I had Rory come over, and he watched us, and then he noticed. He's like, oh, he's not dropping his hip to dominate that inside arm. So I was like, oh, right. And it's this thing that I've been doing for many years, and my son does it, and it's super effective. But it's such a small thing. You don't even think it's a technique, But when you start doing it, it's very effective because you pin your opponent, you put them in a really bad position. So because of us positionally training, he was able to learn something that just made his side control north-south so much more powerful.
Right. And to your point, a little tiny subtle thing like that may be hard to spot on an instructional. Or,
People won't even mention it probably, yeah. And the other thing is when you're positionally training, Dan, it's not a match. You know what I mean? So we're out of that mindset of, oh, I'm here to protect my status. I'm here to win. I'm here to get over on people. And instead, you're here to develop. So we're in a laboratory. We're troubleshooting this position and trying to figure it out, try to get better at it. And then if you're the best person in your academy and you never get mounted or nobody ever takes your back, you're probably not going to be that effective at defending from those positions, Like Gordon Ryan was just in one of his last match, he got to mount on Mateus Denise, who's an ADCC champion, and I think he was on mount for 6 minutes. And I wonder if it's, of course he's amazing, probably the best mount in the world anyways, but maybe Denise didn't do a lot of positional training. I don't know.
It's sort of like no one mounts me.
Yeah, because he's so good.
I've known black belts that are like shocked to be mounted. They're sort of, saying I hadn't been mounted in a year or something like that.
Right. Which is probably not good for your development. Right. So you should routinely put yourself in some of those positions. Yeah. And then, so I've been doing some privates lately too, Dan. I had a couple of white belts in, and we were just positionally training side control escapes. And in 1 hour thing, they got so much out of it. They were actually escaping technically correct from side control. And it's because that's all we were doing. We weren't all over the place. We showed them, I showed them, here's the plan A to escape from side control, to re-guard. And then they drilled it. So it took like 10 minutes tops. And then now we're going live. So they got a lot of live training in an hour. They probably got 45 minutes of live training in 1 hour. And then I could point out, like, you're not exactly doing this. You get a fixture position of your arm here. And so the training ends up, the instruction part of me is so specific to what they're doing in the situation they're in that it's so much more easy to retain. And then the students, they can see their development. They're like, wow, now I can get out of side control because that guy was trying to hold me in it and I got out. It's just awesome to train this way. So positional training is number 4. Now, number 5 is something you actually referred to it earlier in the podcast. I call it cognitive replay. So cognitive, it's because we're thinking about something. It's in the front of our mind, a prefrontal cortex sort of activity. And replay, we use the word replay for sports a lot. So essentially, before I go look at my video, I try to remember what happened. So you and I are rolling. Something happens. I think I'm passing, and then you sweep me. Something else happens, and then we stop training, wherever the round ends, and then I try to remember what happened. Oh, he snuck that butterfly hook in when I didn't notice it, and he was controlling my elbow. So you try to remember the sequence that happened where it all went bad for you and what you could have done differently.
Right. And again, I assume you're saying to try to do it immediately. I would think 5 rolls later it becomes very hard to remember what happened.
You got to do it right then. Right. And this is a facility that you have to develop. Like you said, oh, John, you're always good at that. I wasn't as good at that. But if it's something you're continually doing, like every time you roll, you're trying to remember the sequence of events and what happened, you get better and better at remembering them. And then you're just going to get better at troubleshooting your game and realizing your mistakes and realizing what you have to do differently next time.
Yeah, and maybe it's snowball. I'm thinking, too, maybe if you work on this, you just have, throughout the roll, maybe somewhat better body awareness that allows you to know what happened. As opposed to, like, I'm just doing a friendly roll. I'm coming after him. Then you're swept, and you're like, I don't know what happened. I don't know where my It's like, well, did you have your hand on his hip? Like, I don't know. I don't know where anything was. You know, I was just kind of coming at him, trying to pass him.
Yeah.
as opposed to a more thoughtful approach, and then you're
It's
aware
more
where your
thoughtful.
body is.
Yeah. And it takes even the things that work, Dan. It takes things from sort of the unconscious into the conscious. It makes what you're doing more deliberate. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I was training with Pedro last night, the great Pedro Millet. He was helping me out, and I was trying to pass his guard, and he was trying to get an underhook. And then I noticed I protected myself by shifting my knee. So it's something that I apparently knew how to do. We were training live, so I did it. But after the roll, I was like, oh, did you notice I did this with my knee? So I explained to him what I was doing to sort of protect myself from an underhook, but then it emphasized it to myself. It brought it from the unconscious into my deliberate mind, just like doing this cognitive replay of something that went right, that I did correct. So sometimes we do a lot of things right that we don't even know we're doing them. But if we can bring it into our deliberate mind, it's going to be repeatable. We're going to be able to repeat it. We're going to be able to share it with our...
Right, I was saying you could use it as an instructor to actually... Because you said before, many instructors, some of the best instructors and practitioners in the world are doing things that they don't know that they're doing.
I think the best people in the world, a lot of them are, yeah.
And they'll even sometimes say, they'll directly say something that they didn't do. I remember you had examples of someone really good, maybe Marcelo Garcia or someone like that, that you said was actually saying, and then what I do is this, and it wasn't really quite what he was doing.
That's from my experience. Yeah, not to be critical of anybody. Also,
we're saying these are great people.
There was another judo player, Yamashita, who I think went 10 years undefeated in judo, Olympic champion, world champion, the whole 9 yards. And he was doing Osoto Gari, and he's like, you have to raise your foot up to like the level of your own face. And you have to be leaning forward all the time. And then I watched a lot of his matches, and he wasn't doing that at all. And he was very successful anyways. So it was almost as if you need the intention of that, and you need some of that energy, because in the heat of the battle, if you're not thinking of driving forward, you're going to be leaning too far back probably. I don't know what it was, but he wasn't doing it exactly as he was teaching it, which I thought was interesting, And then when I first started teaching, Dan, people would say to me, gee, you're really good at passing. How do you pass a guard? And literally my thought was, well, I break their legs open, and then I kind of get around their legs somehow, and I get to side control. That was my whole understanding of my passing. I was pretty proficient at it, but I had no idea what the hell I was doing. Yeah. Not great, yeah.
Right, and then it's hard to teach it as well.
Yeah, but now I'm
just
better.
Do it.
Yeah.
And then also, I assume, so if it's foremost in your mind, like I use my knee to stop this underhook, you'll be a little faster at doing it too, right? Like as we know in jiu-jitsu, that half second, that quarter second.
Yeah.
So when you're like, I'm going to move my knee, and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
It'll be more consistent and faster.
I think so. Definitely. Yeah. And if you're fatigued, you could still make it happen. Yeah, definitely. Okay, the sixth one here.
So now we're in the bonus.
Now this is the bonus round.
Bonus points.
So number 6 is emphasizing principles over techniques. So if you understand sort of the unifying principles of jiu-jitsu, it helps you learn techniques better. Sometimes learning a technique is like memorizing a recipe to bake a cake or something. Like there's 10 or 12 steps, and you have to do that for some things. But if you can start understanding the principles, they're underpinning all the different techniques anyways. So it's going to help you remember techniques, help you learn them faster, and help you when you're in a novel situation. Oh, I don't want to get submitted, so I'm going to keep my elbows closer to my body. I'm going to protect my neck somehow. Just the basic principles. I find that super important. And whenever I teach a technique, I try to point out the principles that are underlying what we're doing as well.
And it'll help you do the technique properly, right? No matter, so we've said before, this 8-step sweep, something goes wrong, right? Like your
step 3 goes wrong.
The resisting opponent does something that they're not supposed to do, or they resist in a different way, or something goes wrong. But if you have the principles, you'll adapt to it, right?
Definitely.
I assume that's the idea, because you know kind of what you're trying to do, as opposed to, step 3's gone. I
guess I'm going home. Yeah. You're like Mr. Kruger at Seinfeld. You're locked out. You're like, I guess I'm going to go home.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay, we're ripping through this. Another bonus one, number 7. Oh.
Wait, how many? You've got a lot there.
I get I got 11. I don't want to scare people off. We might not get through all of them. Okay, number 7, 3 levels of training partners. So in other words, it's helpful if you train with somebody who is pretty much on par with you, and you can have some scrappy dogfighting sparring. If somebody's better than you, it's good to stretch yourself. And then you still want to train with people that you have an advantage over, so you can develop new parts of your games and you can expand and develop your game. Pretty straightforward,
makes
right?
Sense.
Some people get this idea, you got to train with the iron, so they only want to train with people who are better than them or something.
Yeah.
And
We've said before, say like well, I have a lot of things that I can't do well, but it's like I can't get a triangle. There's
Right.
no way I'm getting this on a blue belt. Even, you know what I mean? So for
Yeah.
me, I'm like, I better have someone pretty new
yeah,
if I want to practice trying to get a triangle.
that's how I learned
they
my
have to have
triangle.
no idea. Yeah.
I was a purple belt and I couldn't do a triangle to save my life. And I did a lot of sparring with this one white belt who's also a little smaller than me and a little physically weaker. And I was able to develop my triangle game that way. And the other thing is, if you're always getting your ass kicked, there's only so much learning there,
Yeah.
you know? And then it could...
Well, nothing works.
Yeah,
Right? Because how do you know what works if you can't get any of it to work?
yeah,
You know?
exactly. And it's just frustrating. And most people are just going to quit.
Yeah.
You know, and you can get that sense of learned helplessness. You must have seen those studies about rats. They put a rat in a rain barrel, and he'll swim around for like 8 minutes before he stops swimming and just floats there. And then once he's had that experience, he quits a lot faster next time.
Yeah. He gives up.
Yeah, you give up. Yeah, so if you you just start to give up. So just
I
getting...
think we've all felt that, like someone with a really good guard and several attempts, and then if you feel like, well, I can't pass it, like
So
you're exhausted, you just drop down into the guard, like I can't pass this.
I saw an interview of this guy who was a training partner with John Smith, the wrestler. So John Smith coaches Oklahoma State now, I think, but he was a multiple world champion. Yeah,
all time. Isn't he in the discussion of the best American wrestlers ever? Top few.
I think you could easily say he's the best of all time American wrestler. So his training, this guy, he goes, yeah, I trained with him for a little over a year, and I realized you can only train with John for a year. Because first of all, he's going to start he's just going to kick your ass. So then your gains becoming like making him less effective at kicking your ass than he was the day before. So it goes, so you get better. He goes, but after a certain point of time, you stop getting better. And then he stops getting better because now you've like designed a way to slow John Smith down a little bit, which is just not enough development for your own game. And then he's not developing enough now either. So he said John Smith would change partners like every year or so or something like this. And people shouldn't stay that long with him either. And and then only then people had to be pretty mentally tough to just train with him, because you're just like losing all the time.
Brutal.
Yeah. So it seemed like an
And
example.
again, these different levels of training partner and different training partners, they're going to give you different looks and do different things that someone might never try.
Yeah.
If you stick
The only time this doesn't really apply, Dan, is if you're a really good competitor, purple belt or brown belt or something, if you're training with a brand new white belt, it's really not going to help you at all. And they might injure you in some weird, clumsy way. I was listening to Gordon Ryan on his new product, and he was saying that. He said that when he got to a certain level, he had to really start limiting who he was training with, just to make sure he got the most out of his time, number one, and stay away from some wacky injury.
Yeah, and I imagine also if you're Gordon Ryan, or a lot of people, there's no need to get a brand new training. You know, you can practice your triangle on a blue belt or you don't need to tap white belts, or, you know what I mean? Like, it just, even if it's a weakness of yours, you still don't need a new white belt to work on it.
Yeah,
right?
there's plenty of really good guys who are below his level.
Right.
That he can expand his game on. Yeah. So what was that? That was 7. Do we want to cut it here and save the rest for another episode?
We're going to overload people.
We're going to overload
Why
people.
don't you just read through, again, today's points?
That's a very good point. Number 1, video your sparring sessions. And you don't have to do it all the time.
Does everyone have a pen out there?
Yeah.
Let's write these down.
Number 2, take notes before and after training. Could just spend a minute or two doing that. Utilize world-class instructionals. So this new takedown I'm working on, I put it in YouTube, and then I found Jordan Burroughs teaching it, who's like one of the best wrestlers in the world right now. So I got to see his ideas on the same takedown.
Great.
It's great. You don't even have to buy instructionals necessarily. But I would advocate look to the best in the world who are competing. You know what I mean? Not somebody who just has a big platform on YouTube or something. There's a lot of guys that got on YouTube early, Dan, and they got a big platform in jiu-jitsu, but I don't know if they've ever won a match in their life. So they may have good stuff, but I'd rather just go to the best in the world. Number 4, positional training. You can do a round from mount, do a round from back control, do a round from guard, do a round from turtle position. All those things are probably useful. Cognitive replay. That's been trademarked by yours truly. I trademarked this. I came up with this term.
So no one out there used the term.
Just do it. Especially if
Right.
you're my students. After you go through some kind of mad scramble and get some result in your jiu-jitsu, try to remember exactly what happened step by step, and you'll end up starting to improve your training. Emphasize principles over techniques. Understand all the principles of jiu-jitsu, why your techniques are working, and then you'll learn why they happen to not be learning. And then the last one we brought up was 3 levels of training partners. Somebody at your level, somebody a little bit below, somebody a little bit above you.
And I think it's worth saying, honestly, that it sounds like 7 different points, but you could actually, I think almost everyone out there could incorporate all 7 and have basically the same experience. In that it's not like, oh, well, I used to have fun going and now this is, it's like you're still just rolling with people. You're still,
I think so.
It's like you're just tweaking. You're making tweaks before you go. While
I think
you're
it's
there,
more
you're
fun too.
Yeah.
And when you're focused on developing your game, I think it psychologically takes the pressure off. I don't have to go in there and tap somebody to feel good about myself that day. I could just go in and develop something. And then, and I find, Dan, at our academy, I'm learning from everybody. I won't say everybody, but I'm learning from the upper belts, like the more technical guys. It's not like, oh, I'm the teacher, I'm teaching everybody everything.
But that's
Doesn't
back
work
to,
that way.
you always bring this up, but again, if you're focusing on this improvement and on these kinds of things, you don't have to leave. You just said this, but worth emphasizing that you don't have to leave thinking, how many people did I tap or did someone tap me?
Yeah.
You're not focusing on that. You're focusing on your goal or what you wrote down ahead of time or what you wanted to improve.
That's it. All right, Dan, we'll wrap this up and we'll have some more for another episode. So 5 ways to take your game from white belt to professional
And
level
with 2 bonus.
with 2 bonus. I
And
love
then
it.
next time we'll have maybe another
White
5.
belt over 40, we'll say. Over 40 white belt tips.
5 more next time, maybe.
Yeah, 5 more next time. Definitely. Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Please subscribe and check the notifications bell on YouTube and tell your friends about this great information you got here. And go out there and develop yourself and reach out to me if you have any questions or comments. Take care.